Welcome, everybody, to another episode in this special edition of Fantasies from the Bedroom, where we make all of your fantasies come true. I am your host, Jake Weiss, and we are recording, unfortunately, not from the bedroom, as that's what it was named when I lived in a different apartment. So we come to you now live from our living room here in our Manhattan apartment. But all the same, still happy to make all of your fantasies come true, both football and anywhere else. And we are joined here by an unbelievable guest. It is Clem from Barstool, Justin Clemenza. We are so thankful to have him on. He is a writer, blogger, podcaster, just amazing individual, and sadly, as we'll get into, a fan of many of the unsuccessful New York sports franchises, though not as many of the unsuccessful ones as I am. So we'll get into it. But Clem, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It would have felt weird being in the bedroom, our first time meeting each other face to face, or I guess, webcam to webcam, but I can see we're in the living room. We got a little jar of wine corks there, so that each one means a very good time, I'm sure, was had. So that's why I always like seeing the wine corks and stuff like that. So I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you pointing that out. But whether it's sad or good, we started that cork collection at the beginning of quarantine.
Oh,
you're
wow.
You're looking at only 6.5 months of work, but look, when you live in a New York City apartment this size and you have nothing to do, the wine happens. I live here with my girlfriend, so it's you're right. Good times were had, but probably too many. Too many.
Especially during quarantine. Hey, no judging during quarantine. We don't judge for any wine being consumed, any pounds put on. The goddamn assholes who took pounds off, whatever it may be. All good. Happy to be here. This should be fun. And like you said, we have a common interest in terms of bad New York teams. I'm sure there's probably been a few bad fantasy teams and players we've shared along the way, and we'll go through all the good, the bad, and the ugly, and hopefully some best on the horizons.
Absolutely. And obviously I'll give the plug. We'll do free ads here. Love the Barstool flag in the back. And I am wearing one of my many Barstool Met shirts. These are one of the ones that commemorate the misery. I have some good ones of David Wright celebrating at home plate against the Nationals that celebrate the positive. So, it's a balance.
Yep, as perfectly balanced as all things should be, which we say way too much about the Mets, but it is the truth. The Mr. Met middle finger shirt, I was told by KFC when he made it, he goes, that was like the one Met shirt that like it hit there's like different, if you hit sell a certain amount of shirts, it hits like a bonus, you get a little bonus in your pocket. And he came up with that. He's like, most Met shirts don't hit the bonus. If they do, maybe at the tail end of their run. He's like, that hit the bonus the first night because it was the epitome of everything that was wrong with the New York Mets. Mr. Met is the purest mascot entity in like sports, if not just baseball, all sports. And the fact that he had been turned to this R-rated flipping off the fans was the perfect encapsulation of what life is with the Wilpons. So when I saw that shirt, it brought a smile to my heart. And here we are, man.
Couldn't have said it better myself. They are a comedy of errors, and this one just took the cake. You felt like you were watching an SNL skit on things that went wrong with the Mets, but it was real life. It was really happening. The mascot was flipping off fans. So as you mentioned, we're going to cover a variety of things. This is a fantasy football podcast by nature, so we're going to start in the football and fantasy world. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we'll veer off even within that, and we have our own stories. And then we have to talk Mets and even a little Knicks and just some other New York sports and everything like that. It would be a mistake by me to have you on, right, and not be able to share the misery as the baseball playoffs are going on that somehow we weren't in. But we'll get to that. So we'll start football and we'll start professional football. Both Jets and Giants off to a great start here. And 0-3 Giants just lost to the B team of the 49ers. So as a Giants fan, get me in your shoes. What are you feeling about this season? And we're going to come to my perspective on it. Are you already tanked for Trevor, or do we still believe in Danny Dimes as the quarterback of the future?
So I bet my answer will be different than most of the fan base right now. But all right, I think I am more optimistic than I don't think most fans when it comes down to everything. With the Giants, I'm like, I have to believe in something with this team because it's like, again, I don't think it's any secret the last like 3 or 4 years, that stupid stat that came out where it's like we have a worse record than like every team, including the 0-16 Browns since 17. So I try to be positive because if not, then it's just like, let's just bitch and moan. And I think just crying about your teams on the internet, especially a team that's won 2 Super Bowls in, the last 15 years or whatever it's been, and against the greatest dynasty in sports, kind of rings a little hollow on people, even though it's been a rough few years here. That being said, I was fine with the first 2 games. I was like, you know what? Good defenses, all that kind of stuff. They almost came back and beat the Bears. Everyone forgets that. Like, if they catch that touchdown in the game, it's 1-1, and, we're kind of like, all right, The thing is, it was the Niners, C squad by the time it was all said and done. They lost players during the game, and they just couldn't stop, Ayuk, and then obviously the running game with Shanahan and all that kind of stuff. It drives me crazy. This is the thing, though. This is why I'm not freaking out yet. And again, they're going to lose on Sunday too. So I'm going into this saying it's already 0-4. I think almost everyone looked at that schedule was like, that's an 0-4 start, or maybe 1-3 if Bad Mitch comes out for the Bears, because we didn't know if it was him or Foles. Bad Mitch comes out, and maybe they could have been 1-3, which again, we could have been if everything had gone right. Despite the Niners are just a different level, man. That's like Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh could have taken whoever the backup was to Steve Young back in the day, and they just beat you with their system. That's exactly what the Niners did. Everyone going into the season was like, the Giants are going to have growing pains, and we got to be patient here. We got to establish the system. This team has been an absolute dumpster fire. Then once they started out, and with COVID, lack of training camp, preseason, all that kind of stuff, everyone's like, all right, this is going to take some lumps along the way. Then we take a few lumps, and everyone's just like, blow it up, fire Judge, fire Gettleman, get rid of Danny Dimes. And I'm just like, geez, guys, what happened to let's let the season build and all this kind of stuff. So I am going to sound crazy saying this, but I'm fine. I go on the Giants Reddit, and they were pretty positive. They were kind of mirroring me, hey, we got to build something here. And after last week's game, and granted, it was a goddamn beatdown by a JV squad. Nonetheless, everyone is ready just to blow it all up. I'm ready to stay the path and say, let's just get the first season done here. We do see improvements. I think I read somewhere they're the second least penalized team in the NFL, which they had a massive penalty in a big spot, which kind of against Darnay Holmes, which kind of brought it all tumbling down before the half last week. But the tank for Trevor stuff, listen, I've been asked this a lot, and I don't even want to answer it because the fact of the matter is I love Danny Dimes. I'm the head of the damn wagon. I'm just trying to make people believe in him because I don't think this guy needs all of New York against him before he even took his first snap, which is what happened because we're goddamn idiots whenever a draft happens, as the Jets fans can attest, Giants fans, Knicks fans who are a little bit of both. We're these walking, talking, breathing memes that just cry about everything. I have to keep the strong face on for Danny, so I'm saying we can't go with it. But the other side of it is I was thinking in the car today. I almost wrote a blog about it. I might write one tomorrow. There's 8 quarterbacks in the NFL max that teams wouldn't be oh yeah, let's go get Trevor Lawrence. Say everything just fell out of the bottom tomorrow for San Francisco, right? And everyone gets hurt, and they literally cannot field a team, and they go 2-14. They have Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Kyle Shanahan should be let's go for Trevor Lawrence and win 5 Super Bowls with him. He's that good. Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, all the guys with the mega super contracts who are just crushing it, those guys, the teams would be no, we're not taking it for Trevor. I think almost every other team, even the Packers, I was thinking the Packers would draft Trevor Lawrence and then just make Aaron Rodgers so mad he never has an incomplete pass again. So my very long-winded answer is I am very upset. Last week did a lot to my optimism, and this week's going to take a little bit more off the top, but I cannot completely be hey, tank, blow it up, go from there. I've seen enough of the little improvements with this team to have some hope left. It is also probably just the idiot in me in speaking who has seen nothing but pain from the Mets, Knicks, and Giants for the last couple of years.
I mean, when they call you the eternal optimist there at Barstool, I see it coming to life now. I absolutely love it, but it's also refreshing, as you said, to kind of talk to somebody who's a New York fan that's not a Yankee fan, that has that perspective. Some of our Giants fans on this pod will definitely appreciate what you're saying. And I think everything you said is really accurate, particularly with the Giants. It's, Barkley goes down immediately, so you throw it away. To your point, I have come to hate so much how reactionary we are based on results. To your point of if the touchdown goes in, we're oh, wow, no need to panic, right? Great comeback by the Giants. Everything else here is gravy. But one missed pass, and things fall apart. And it's just such a problem here. And it's obviously on the other end, if you keep winning the Niners win with this backup squad, everybody's we're fine. If this week they lost, things would go crazy. So I'm glad you're not voting for tank for Trevor. I like your point that all the teams in the NFL probably would, which is as crazy as it sounds as a Jets fan, Clem, I am not ready to tank for Trevor. I believe in Darnold. And I think that Darnold, if you and I were Darnold's receivers, he would have just as good of a chance at completing the passes that he's had these past few weeks. I mean, we're throwing to a guy named Braxton Berrios as our best wide receiver. That can't be the name of a number one wide receiver on a good team. It's just not allowed. And then to blame the quarterback.
When I heard that name, KFC is like, oh, Braxton Berrios. And I was like, dude, I thought that was the guy from Game of Thrones. Like, there's Don Berrios or whatever. I was like, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe that was. And then did you see on Gamecast on ESPN on the fantasy, it had unknown player for one of the Jets receivers. And I was just like, that is all you need to know. And listen, like, listen, I know I'm a Giants fan, and a lot of Giants fans like talk down to Jets fans and all this kind of stuff. Both our teams are dumpster fires. They've been dumpster fires for a little while. But the way that they've like built the weapons around Sam Darnold is criminal. And like, I'm not saying the Giants by no means have like, studs. If anything, the best receiver we've had in franchise history, we just traded away. But at least we had at least the Giants had, Saquon, and they have Evan Ingram who can at least usually catch the ball. And then you had, on paper, Shepard, Tate, and Slayton, who might be a bunch of number two receivers, but like they're not Braxton Berrios. And granted, those guys have gotten hurt with the Jets and all kinds of stuff. But I just feel like they have not given Sam Darnold the chance to succeed. And this does, and listen, we're Mets fans. We know how this goes. This does feel like one of those things where if they move on from Darnold, he's going to hit somewhere else. And I've had Jets fans in my mentions from literally the minute the number 3 pick was taken, just mocking me about the Giants taking Saquon at 2 and Sam Darnold at 3 and all this kind of stuff. And I don't have any animosity toward Jets fans. Listen, Mets Jets, that's a brotherhood right there. We are blood brothers, and that's because like we're bleeding and crying into our beers. Like that is a bond. Even if you're a Jets fan that doesn't like baseball, we've been through the same stuff where it's not, you don't just lose, you get embarrassed and everyone laughs at you when you lose. So it kind of hurt me that they were coming at me, and I've had to kind of root against Sam Darnold. I at least want my guy Danny Jones to pan out better than him, so it doesn't look like the Giants have this huge egg on their face. But I mean, at this point, the Jets are kind of doing it for him, and I imagine you're probably in the same boat. I can completely understand you not wanting to tank for Trevor, even though I do feel like at least Darnold has another year where you could be like, hey, we gave him 3 years without a ton behind him. But I think I don't think either of us are going to be like, oh, man, I can't believe they let Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones go for, like, the closest. It's like Manning, Luck, Trevor is what it feels like, right, with Trevor Lawrence. So I feel like we kind of have to do that. So I hope I don't know, man. I'm happy you're like that. I think with you guys, it's a matter of just getting rid of Gase and kind of just – I still can't believe he's the coach of the Jets. It's crazy to me.
It is so Jets, and then we'll move on, that they finally get a guy as a quarterback who we all believe in, and they pair him with this just absolute buffoon, and it's going to cost us. And I know for a fact, the second they trade Darnold, literally that's what happened with Gase's last quarterback. You're looking at Ryan Tannehill, and that's the Sam Darnold formula. The second he got away from Gase, he's an $100 million quarterback. So there's literally a blueprint already. Just get Gase out of there. Instead of letting Darnold go do that on another team, can't we just do that here? Can we just do that here?
That's what I'm saying. And it was so funny. It was like Tannehill blows up. Devontae Parker, first year without Gates, blows up. Kenyon Drake gets traded to the Cardinals. He had a great second half of the season, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, it does seem to be, and Adam Gase had a great season with Peyton Manning. There's like 6 coaches who are fucking well. Everyone, Peyton Manning looks everyone. You say we could play receiver, we could probably be offensive coordinator for Peyton Manning or his quarterback's coach. And he's like, all right, and this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I'm going to do. And, I'm sure Manning, co-signed him for the job and said he was good. But, like, Peyton Manning, that's probably just what he does. He's a good dude. And unless he had, real stake in the Jets, he really doesn't have anything to tell the Jets, good or bad. The guy helped him out in his career. I'm sure he likes Gase for whatever reason. But, I mean, once those eyeballs were Googling at the press conference, I've seen this before as a Mets fan. Again, I was like, oh, boy, this doesn't seem good. And it's actually been worse than I could have expected so far.
Couldn't agree more with all of that. So you've mentioned that we mentioned both of us a couple of times how you're a Mets and a Giants fan. Now, at least where I grew up, very not common, right? You got a lot of Mets and Jets fans, right? Losers. And then you got a lot of Yankees and Giants fans, overall winners, though recently the Giants losing. Yep. How did that combo come about for you?
It's kind of funny because I get that all the time. KFC calls me a gypsy fan and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I grew up – so – some people think I live in Long Island or this and that. I live in Putnam County, it's Westchester County, and then the next town north of Westchester County is the beginning of Putnam County, and that's where I live. This
is a podcast of Westchester kids, by the way. We all from Chappaqua all went to Horace Greeley High School. That's the crew that is the source of this pod.
Yo,
You're speaking
fancy,
our
huh?
language.
Yo,
You're speaking
fancy.
our language.
845-914 boys for the old
Hey,
school, all that kind of stuff.
914, let's go. Exactly.
We call heroes wedges. Deal with it, people. I don't want to hear a damn thing.
Exactly. So
I'm from
Putnam County
Mayapack,
life.
so, exactly. Putnam County life. I'm from Mayapack, born and raised, moved back here to start my family. And like my neighborhood was all Giants Mets fans because I think baseball is like, at least for me, baseball was kind of like the core one because I feel like New York is a baseball state, city, whatever you want to call it. And I think from there, we just happen to all be Giants fans because I think Jets Mets is a very big Long Island thing, whereas Giants Yankees, that probably goes anywhere, I guess, now that I think about it. I feel like maybe Jersey might have a little more Giants Yankee side of it. But for me, it was like Giants were my football team, and then I chose the Mets on my own. I have no idea how I did it. It was an awful, awful decision looking back. I mean, I would my like the part of my life when sports means a little too much to you and you're young and these guys are superheroes, that was just as the Yankees were winning World Series year after year. I was rooting against them. I was rooting against Michael Jordan and Derek Jeter during my formative years. It didn't turn out too well. It's amazing that I still follow sports.
And you're an optimist.
And I'm an optimist, exactly. God bless me. It must have been my defense mechanism to keep me from like hurting myself. So honestly, it was just one of those things, and I never thought it was weird. I obviously understood the parallels between like the Big Brother franchises in New York and like the Little Brother, but I was always just like, oh, I got 1-on-1, and again, a lot of the kids in my neighborhood were the same. In school, in school, it was more like, at least for me, I noticed people's baseball teams more than I did their football teams. And I don't know if that's because baseball is an everyday sport and you don't talk about football as much maybe during the week or something like that. Whereas as you get older, it's your life, which is a whole other thing. But like NFL is my favorite league. The Mets are my favorite team, though, if that makes sense. If I could have chose one team to win a championship, it'd be the Mets because you bleed that 162-game season, live and die every single day. Where like football, if the Giants stink, I could just watch Red Zone. I could watch a crappy Sunday night game, and I love it. I just love, again, we'll get into, I'm sure, the fantasy stuff, all that kind of stuff. So it was just one of those things that I kind of just went into it. Again, I wish I was a Giants-Yankees fan growing up. It would have been easier. I would have hated being a Gabagool Yankee fan and a 27 rings guy. I would probably be a lot less likable. But I say Mets fan, the Mets side of me builds character. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I do thank God, though, I didn't become Jets, Mets, Knicks, because that I don't think I'd be here anymore.
No, it's a brutal life, and I need you to help resolve something for me, Clem, because you mentioned how it was your formative years when the Yankees were good. Now, I want you to think back. So we were a little later, right? I'm a little younger. We were from 96 to 2000. We were 2 to 6 years old, this group of friends that you're hearing that we're talking to. There is an individual in particular who claims that he remembers those World Series. Now, obviously, he has gone back and watched clips, right? Like I could say I remembered the 86 World Series. Is there an age where you start giving people credit for having lived through a championship as a fan? You can obviously claim any championship always. I'm so proud of the 86 and 69 Mets, but where do you draw that line?
So, I mean, you have to be able to remember it. Now, I will say this about your buddy, and I'm going to say, if I'm the judge here, I will say there's a chance he does remember at least one, because I am an 82 baby. 86, I do not remember. Complete in the dark. And I was 4 years old at the time. However, my first memory as a Mets fan, which is very fitting, is I remember being in school and knowing that night in the 1988 playoffs was a big game.
Socia.
Go to bed, woke up the next morning, and I remember just like I was exhausted, so I didn't even like stay up for the game. Or I might have watched the first few innings. I go to bed. I wake up and I like had like a tear in my eye in the morning. And I was like, like that was weird. Like it was just probably like a typical, like you wake up with tear in your eye thing. And I looked downstairs and I don't even know what the fuck. I guess so. I looked at the news or something because there was no internet and there was no newspaper probably at that point in the morning.
The dark ages.
And exactly. And I was like, Dad, what happened? And he's like, oh, like my Socia hit a home run off like good and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that must have been with the tear. I must have known. That's such a stupid kid thing to say. But I remember that to this day. And I like it's foggy there from the 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. And then the next like real sports memory I have is probably like the 1990 Super Bowl when the Giants beat the Bills in Super Bowl 25 in 1990, 91 or whatever. So I will say, like 6 years old, that is a vivid memory. I see my elementary school in my mind's eye. That is legit. Saying you remember every little thing, like I remember that one game, it was a huge game, and that's all I remember though. Saying you remember like the full-blown dynasty, that's pushing it a little, I think.
Love that answer. We give him credit for 2000. There's even parts of 2000 I remember. The Mets were obviously there, but not. You can't claim 96 and 98 at the very least. Those are, to your point, you're 2 years old, 4 years old. It's a farce, and I'm so glad you shared that. I can take this to the bank now. You're the judge here, so it's fine.
Now I'm gonna bang the gavel right here.
Right? I love it. I love it, and that means if you give him 2000, the Yankees only have won 2 World. It's as much in our lifetime. That's as many as the Giants have won. I can live with that. The claiming 5, it's outrageous. So
it's outrageous. And like, again, like, oh, I could claim that. Like, I don't claim the 1986 World Series. Like, I'm saying Uncle Steve is going to give me my World Series because, like, I've never seen one. If my parents prop me up for Buckner going through his legs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't register. And like claiming, and then again, I mean, the 27 ring thing is just like, it gets more ridiculous, and the internet just keeps picking things apart. It's like, half these guys, Michael Jordan gets criticized for because he was facing quote unquote plumbers and all this stuff, even though that's a bunch of BS. It's just like internet memes and stuff. It's like there was like half the amount of teams when the Yankees were running off some of their World Series. There wasn't even segregation allowed back then. It's a completely different game. It's a joke. So 27 rings is basically a meme now. Now I know they're gonna go and win a World Series this year, and these guys are gonna start talking 28 rings. It's like, guys, it was a 60-game season. Half the games were like double headers in 7 innings. The extra inning games got solved with a runner on second. Like, get out of here. So, I mean, if they want to keep just piling up that part of their history, they can, but it's only going to make us laugh at them, which you should be like, all right, you guys are like the most, successful American sports franchise ever. And they're kind of like, by claiming World Series that they were 2 years old for, it's a bad look. You got enough as it is. You just had one in 09 at least. So you have one. I mean, you're outside the decade range at this point, and don't you dare try to claim this one as the title. Because there's just no way no one's going to let that one slide through.
There's this idea of act like you've been there, and Yankee fans don't, right? They still act like they're like a Mets fan franchise that's trying to grasp at everything. So I agree with you. We get to laugh at them there. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, I know we veered. I want to come back to fantasy football now, and I have a couple questions there. So I have one. I feel like everybody, and maybe the answer for you is that everybody has either that loss that just sticks with them in their craw or that draft pick, right? Is there a memory you have of, Brian Westbrook kneeling on the 1 is the classic one that people talk about. Do you have a story or a moment that sticks with you as the low fantasy football moment?
Yeah, Jake, you just ripped open a scar here. We got a lot of bleeding going on, emotional scar. I've been in this league forever, and I'm always in the mix. I'm always in the playoffs. I'm in the finals probably 4 or 5 times, whatever. Just can never get the W. And there was one year where my team had just come together. You get the right guys. Everyone's getting healthy at the right time, or you pick up the right, league winner back in week 12, and he just becomes a beast. And I had a team that was just a wagon of a team. I had a decision between 2 defenses. It was the Tennessee defense, which is, Tennessee's defense the last 5 years, 10 years. I feel like they're hit or miss, but, they could hit. They were facing someone decent. Or not a good matchup for them, a decent good matchup.
Gotcha.
Or the Pats defense against the Ravens. And I also had Justin Tucker. So as this goes off, I get the Tennessee defense has an 8. I go into Monday Night Football. Patriots, Ravens against each other. And at this point, it was a bad idea to have – I don't like when I have an offensive guy against my defense because you're playing against yourself. I do this. Justin Tucker, this is the semis. So this isn't the finals. This is the semis now. And Justin Tucker – one of his things, he gets blocked at the line, a blocked field goal. So the Patriots get a point for the block kick. Tucker should get a -1 for the missed field goal. Goes through the night. That never gives Tucker a missed field goal, but I'm like, he definitely missed that field goal. It should be a negative whatever. So I go in the night up 1 against this matchup. I wake up in the morning, and I woke up at 3 in the morning because you have that, your brain's moving and you have to keep checking your phone. Check my phone, says it's still good. I'm like, holy shit, I think I'm good. But yeah, I know ESPN usually is on 4 o'clock, 4:30 is when the actual scores update. I wake up the next morning, and I think I lost by 0.5 or something like that, 0.04. And an absolute dagger to the heart. I knew it was a stat correction a day later too. It didn't come at first, but I knew it was the guillotine hanging over my head the entire day, and it finally came down. The next week I had, and that was the other thing. I remember Le'Veon Bell that week had 45 against Buffalo. He absolutely murdered them in the snow. And the only reason I lost is because the kid I played the so the answer to your question, yes, I remember this very well. It was only a few years ago, but as if it was yesterday. San Diego Chargers the Atlanta defense against who actually had a good week against a rookie Jared Goff with Jeff Fisher still there. They gave him 3 pick sixes, and that's the only reason this kid even had a chance. And because of that, I end up losing. And the next week, of course, all my guys go off. Would I have walked my way to the championship? So that will go to my grave with me. There's no real one play that killed a game for me like a Brian Westbrook, but the Justin Tucker weird thing, who I love Justin Tucker. I'll never blame him for it.
Oh, yeah.
But that was the moment, as well as in 2007, I had a great team. Boston, I had Tom Brady, keeper league. That next day, tears his ACL week 1 of the season. And I go to the airport that day to go to Seattle for work. And all I did was see that torn ACL. I'm telling you, that's all they had on the TV screen in the airport. So those are the 2 moments that are just the knives that are still inside my, when the bullet, they can't take the bullet out. The bullet's just I'm gonna die with those 2 bullets in my soul.
Clem, I've never felt like we are more kindred spirits for 2 reasons. 1, that you have horror stories, because I'm going to share you mine. And 2, that you remember them so vividly. That is sort of what I'm known for in the group, is that I can remember the most random things, to the point that when our middle school baseball team lost a crucial playoff game to Bedford Pound Ridge, it was like 8 years later, I could still recall every play, every pitch of that last inning, including when Andrew Pott's father earlier in the game moved me on a shift in left field all the way into left center, only for the guy to hit a fly ball down the line that I would have caught in my original position. 3 runs scored. Still haven't forgotten. But
Andrew Pott's dad, God damn it.
I know. And yes, we do have a kid in our friend group whose last name is Pott. You can imagine it's gone well over the years. But, Clem, for us, you'll love this. One of the guys in our leagues is Josh Rosen. He's a former commissioner. He was the commissioner the first year ever ESPN League. He had the brilliant idea. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but back in the day, they would do home field advantage, where you would arbitrarily be the home team in a fantasy matchup and you would get 2 points. So you just mentioned 2007. There was one team that to this day is the greatest fantasy team in our league that's ever been assembled. It was Brady Moss that year. Romo was their backup quarterback. They had T.O., they had Adrian Peterson, Clinton Portis, Joseph. It was just, there was nothing. So it was T.O. It was unbeatable. I think they went undefeated or lost 1 game. Our team was the scrappiest team you've ever seen. We started for more than half the season 3 Cleveland Browns. That was the Braylon Edwards breakout year, Kellen
Eric
Winslow,
Anderson.
Jamal Lewis. So we were that team, right? And we got hot, whatever. We make it to the finals. And when I tell you, Clem, one of our running backs got hurt, we picked up for the championship Dominic Rhodes for the Oakland Raiders, 25 points. It was just one of those teams. Unbelievable matchup. We tied normal score, and they won with the home field advantage. Now, I do think, all things considered, if you tied, maybe the team with the better record would win. So it's essentially serving that purpose, and it's better than if we had won by 1 and then the home field advantage had cost it. But to this day, I'll never let them live it down. Home field advantage is theoretically what cost us the championship. Nothing ever sticks with you like that. You just
That's bad commissioning right there. But, it's a rookie mistake. Everyone has rookie mistakes. Rookies make mistakes for a reason, so you can't. But that's an all-time bad beat. It's a mistake. It's I hate when they have the divisions, and it's I don't like teams because it's just put everyone in a big old, standings lump, 12 teams, 10 teams, whatever it may be. But I guess, if it was a tie, you'd say, all right, points 4 is the tiebreaker or any of that other stuff, or decimal scoring. But even then, the fantasy gods, they'll twist the dagger in you. They'll even tie you with decimal scoring. So there's nothing you can say, man. I'll just give you a virtual hug here. We'll hug each other because we're both ripping our souls out here on the podcast right now. Because I'm going to be dreaming about that Justin Tucker miss tonight.
I know. Now I'm going to be thinking about Dominic Rhodes and if he had just gotten 20 more yards. Oh, you just brought up something that you talked about defenses in your speech about your bad beat. Now, I don't know if you were able to listen to some of the clips I shared, but this is my new hill to die on. This is my rage. Defenses and kickers, I think completely – it's the dumbest thing in fantasy ever. There's no skill. It's all look, Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker are great, but they don't get any chances if the team scores a touchdown every time. It's just ridiculous. So I have made my stance clear. Even as commish, I've gone rogue and made my stance fully clear. I will continue to make my stance clear. Where do you stand in the fantasy football on kicker defense, on a 2 QB league, auction draft? Let's start with kicker defense. Where do you stand on the taking the classic format and starting to adjust?
So I'm weird. Kicker and defense drive me nuts, like everyone else, especially defense, because I feel like, again, I told you about the Falcons thing, where that just like when a kicker hits, it's very rare a kicker goes extremely nuclear, but it can happen. When a defense goes nuclear and it's like because the other team's quarterback was goddamn terrible, it just drives you nuts. And this was before I've been making this long before that bad beat happened to me. I'm of the opinion that I like keeping that stuff in the game, so it does matter. But I think having kicker points to start. So if he kicks a 40-yarder, it's worth 2 instead of 4. If a field goal is worth 1.5 instead of 3, extra points are worth 0.5 point. But you still have that because it's like you need to have something. Like it's always good that I always like having a kicker around, and it just feels like that is part of the game. Defense could be another way too, where I think like you should take points off for. I like how they've adjusted over time. Where when I played this back, Stone Age, like before you guys were like born, probably. It was like I was playing the with defenses where it's like they didn't penalize you if you gave up a certain amount of points, where now you hit different levels in terms of the amount of points you get for stuff like that. If you even want to throw yards in there, so it's like if you want to play a defense, but the defense can really hurt you too. I kind of like that. So then you're even like, man, do I even play this defense today? And you're kind of just you have to actually think it out a little bit. But I always like having those in there. I've done IDP. I don't really love it. It doesn't really bring a lot. Now, if you go maybe hardcore IDP, we just do one individual player just to try it out. If we did like lineman, linebacker, defensive back, that could be cool too. But I just like having the teams there just because it has been kind of like a standard part of it. I do think I think kickers points should be halved. And if you could kind of have defense, special teams, if you had special teams, it doesn't really even help because kickoffs don't even get returned anymore. So it's just a punt thing for the most part. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Our league is like a very basic standard league with 1 quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, 2 flex, because running backs were getting a little too held onto. So we kind of dilute them. I don't really love PPR. We do a half PPR in this one. I think receivers have kind of made their move back into the forefront. I don't know how this year is shaking out so far, but I feel like it's not what it was back when the Adrian Petersons and Talmonsons were murdering leagues. 2 quarterback league, I do find it's kind of like where kickers are so important. My league's a 1 quarterback league, and they're just disposable. Like I'll just be playing roulette the rest of the year, and I'll probably do just fine. That I had Danny Jones the first couple of weeks, so I've had to move on from there after last week. But yeah, my league is doing a thing where we're going to have a hard reset on our 20-year anniversary, which is a few years down the road still. But we're going to hard reset and completely revote everything from the bottom. All keepers are gone, all that kind of stuff. And we have we made a note this year where if say the NFL season gets canceled because of COVID-19 and they have to cancel the league before week 16. So say like week 12, the season gets shut down. We saw what happened with Tennessee, obviously.
I was about to say, it feels a lot closer to happening now than it did 48 hours ago if we had done
this. And we voted and we said, if that happens, we're doing the hard reset as soon as this year is over and everything's starting from fresh. So like guys could have stacked teams and they're just gone, no keepers. And I hope we start with a 2 quarterback league because I know people who are in it, and I do like having quarterbacks mean something. And I think we're going to go what was the other thing we're going to do? Auction. I want to do an auction league. I've never done an auction league. I've done a couple online just like fooling around, but it would take a year or 2 to get used to. But we have a kid in my league who's terrible at fantasy football, but he always gets the number 1 pick. And then he won a year where he had 3 guys who he had, 2 keepers who were number 1 picks, had the number 1 pick, and then had, credit to him, he drafted Mahomes late, and he obviously just rode the title. But he had 3 former number 1 picks because he's terrible at that. I think if you're a legit fantasy guy, you can, you know who the guys are, and you don't have to just worry about some random snake, getting them. Then I think auction's the way to go. So I personally, I've never done it. And it also, I think, takes a little more paying attention, which I think the fantasy draft is just as much about having fun as it is about paying attention. But I'm personally someone who, like, obviously loves this shit, and I think auction should be the way to go.
There are some people who are listening right now who are like shaking in their boots, like, oh my God, I can't believe if we go that way, our league is fucked. Like, this is what Jay. And then I know there's some, particularly my partner. We do partners. It's 10 teams. Okay. Each of us has a partner. So 20 people in the league, all from our high school, all from our year. So it's pretty cool. That he literally texts me every week. Every time the opponent's defense gets like a sack, he's like, defenses are the fucking worst. I want no defenses in the league next year. And every time it's like our backup quarterback on our bench does well, he's like, I fucking want 2 quarterbacks. And before the draft, when we were like looking in the 4th round, and he's like, fuck, this guy's going to get drafted because of Snake. He was like, I want auction. So he's like, everything you just said is music to his ears. To your point, though, unless you have some sort of hard reset plan, it's hard to get enough people to be like, we're all in, and that those people wouldn't want to then leave the league, right? I need to maintain continuity in the league. So this is our dilemma, but it's interesting to hear your perspective. My vendetta on defenses will not stop. You said something really interesting, which would be a bigger change, which is, instead of like right now we have it, I think, Clem, like the worst a defense can do is like -4 or something like that. It's interesting to say between yards and points, maybe like really push that, and that like a defense could get you upwards of like -16 or whatever. And so now there's actually a strategy of, do we just not play our defense? That like it's so variable that it becomes that. I don't know if that actually solves the problem, but that's a fascinating different take rather than just get rid of defenses.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, I imagine most of the people in your league are Jets and Giants fans because we're local, right?
Pretty much everybody. There's a couple, maybe there's one who moved to Buffalo who maybe has acquired the Bills as his wagon, but and his fantasy team name is Buffalo Real Estate because he sells real estate in Buffalo. So there you go. But yes, we're a hardcore Mets and Jets and Giants crew.
So, I mean, they can appreciate how much a bad defense can ruin it on the Sunday, right? So I think it kind of does carry over to it. It's like it is half the game. It's literally half the game, or a third of the game if you want to include special teams. But for this purposes, we'll say half the game. I got to shout out special teams because of Joe Judge and all. But, for all intents and purposes, defense does play a big role, and a bad defense can absolutely ruin your Sunday. So should be the same in fantasy, in my opinion. So, and I think, honestly, having kicker points, I've never done it. I've never actually done the math, but I just feel like it would be like, all right, the guy killed me, but you're not getting hit with like a 25 or something crazy. At worst, you get hit with like a 12 on a crazy Sunday for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. Having kicker points just means like somebody could have a bad day of 0, but nobody's really going to win the week with like. But I remember Neil Rackers. You look that up, Clem.
Yes, Neil
That's
Rackers.
the all-time kicker day, like a 21 or 23-point day. And I remember it was just the dumbest thing. But to your point, this past week, the Colts had that Falcons game. The Colts put up 29 fantasy points in our league against the Jets. 2 pick sixes. It's just – that's stupid. Yep. Nobody should have to go against that. So I'm happy to hear that. So those were kind of my questions on fantasy football. You've heard some of my rants on that defense auction, so I'm glad you agree. Like I said earlier, and I know we've incorporated, I can't have you on and not do some Mets talk. As you said,
Mets talk.
I love how you said it. At this point in my life, I might be willing to say the MLB is no longer my favorite league. I've been a baseball guy at heart, but it's gotten harder to watch. They don't market their players well, right? All that. Yep. But the Mets stand alone. I am going to bawl my eyes out. I literally flew home from study abroad. I would do terrible things to people that I love for a Mets World Series. And they're all probably listening now. But so let's quickly talk about them. This past season, right? 2 ways to look at it. And knowing you, I know how you might look at it, but tell me how you're feeling. On the one hand, a lot of young guys played great, right? Conforto, monster season. McNeil, Dom, Nimmo even ended up being good, all that. On the other hand, more than half the teams made the playoffs. This team was like leading baseball on average for 3/4 of the season, and they have the potential 3-time Cy Young winner. How do you feel about the season overall?
I mean, the season was it's harder to miss the playoffs to make it, and you miss the playoffs with this kind of a roster. It's embarrassing. And the thing is, you also do have to say, like, well, you did lose your 2 and 3 pitcher, one because of Tommy John, the other because he opted out and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, it's because of Brody and Jeff Wilpon and all the stuff we've dealt with, and they did not build the team the right way. It was built wrong last year. It was built wrong this year. They compounded the mistakes. At this point, though, We're just looking towards the future. And for the future, this season was good because a lot of our young guys grew up. Some new guys came in, Peterson, Gimme Jimmy, all those kind of guys. So all that stuff. Conforto obviously took the next step. Pete obviously struggled, which isn't great, but you're expecting that sophomore slump. Tom Smith is lights ahead of what I thought he could be. He is the most pleasant of surprises. Seems like a wonderful dude. So, and then obviously you have Jake. Jake is healthy right now, which is like with the Mets knowing, I'm shocked that like in a Corona season, he's not the one who got hurt. So all things being equal, I will take what we got this year. Most importantly, got the Wilpons out. Edwin Diaz showed some flashes at the end too. All in all, bad year, but bright future. And that's all I could ask for with Uncle Stevie coming in. He has something to work with, and him, Sandy, and whatever they surround them with, that's all I could ask for.
Couldn't agree more on all accounts. It's obviously disappointing they didn't make the playoffs, right? You just felt like they should. But, no Thor, no Stroman did hurt them, right? They were throwing out some pretty weak pitchers down the stretch. So I don't feel as bad, and I'm excited for next year. But you mentioned Uncle Stevie Cohen. Yep. You tell me which one you think he is of these two and why. Is he the prince that was promised in the story, or is he the manifestation of the prince that was promised story in that we're going to get a lot of buildup and then there's going to be zero payoff of it? Is Stevie the real deal?
I think Stevie's the real deal, and that's not just – I mean, that's probably a little bit of the optimism coming, right, for sure. And it can't get worse than the Wilpons, you would think, even though I'm sure there's plenty of examples of how this has gone out. But this is just based on people that know him, people that have read his book, the book about him. The guy just doesn't want to lose, and he does what he has to do to win. And whether it's money, whether it's getting the things in right, whatever it's going to take, he's going to do. He's going to hire the right people. He's going to hire the smart people. He's going to do it the right way. You don't get a character based on yourself on billions by just being some schmo. He's going to be legit, and at the very least, he will at least have us be competitive, which is all I can ask for, let alone be, like you said, the prince that was promised, one that's going to bring us there. Hey, listen, I would love if we become the new Red Sox or something like that, where it's this team, this sleeping giant that got some ownership in place and did things the right way. That would be awesome. I just need one. I just want one so that when I go to a grave, I don't have to say I never saw one. And like I said, 1986 don't count. I was 4 years old. I don't remember a goddamn thing from it. So all I need is one. My kids – my little guy's 2.5, so he'll be 3 next season. I don't even want them to wait for him. Too bad. No one waited for me until I could remember. Too bad for him. My daughter will kind of remember because she's 6. That's fine. But all I need is one for me. So yeah, Uncle Stevie, I do think he's going to be the guy that's going to get us there. And at the very least, he won't be the reason we don't get there, which is I think a big reason why the Wilpons were like the bane of our existence as Mets fans.
I have said nothing would make me happier than to have both my son, right, or daughter, and dad alive but all I really care about is I'm alive when the Mets win the next one, right? Like everything else is gravy or extra. I need to be alive. Me, right here. This needs to be breathing and seeing it, and it will be incredible. Everything else would be nice. But I need that, and I don't believe it's going to happen. On the Steve Cohen Billions thing, you should have seen my girlfriend's face when I was like, that guy who's Bobby Axelrod is based off of. And then she was so sad to look him up and realize that they don't necessarily look the same. They've embellished his looks a little on the show. But fucking love how Bobby Axelrod conducts himself. So if that's how Stevie's going to conduct himself, I guess my last question on that is, how do you feel about essentially the Mets getting a Steinbrenner? Like, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it was like I would always be like, well, at least I'm not scummy and I don't buy championships like Steinbrenner. And I sort of feel like now I'm like, let's be scummy and buy championships like Steinbrenner. And now we have our guy to do it.
Yeah, Black Edge. I mean, that's the whole book, is finding out like the gray area of legal and not legal. And like everyone loses their mind about the Astros. It's like, well, like if the Mets World Series came because they banged on trash cans, that's fine. The rings still count unless they're taken away. And think about all these different college programs that have taken down the banners. No one says, well, technically that's vacated. No, that was the championship. You can't take away that champagne. Can't take away that ceremony, the parade, all that kind of stuff. It's in the books, is how we would say. So 100% do whatever is necessary. I said Steve Cohen could have to murder. I will murder for him to get this World Series. Whatever needs to be done. All hands on deck.
You know how I don't know if you've seen the movie The Town, but there's that famous scene where Ben Affleck comes in and he's like, look, we gotta go hurt some people. I'm not gonna be able to tell you anything about him. And he says, whose car are we taking? Right? That's the response. That's how if Steve Cohen needs something from me, whose car are we taking? No questions asked. I will do what needs to be done. But we're talking about positives here with Steve, but let me bring it back to the Wilpons and let me bring together probably, and I know you've talked about this before, but for our listeners, you have these two titans of terrible, the Wilpons and James Dolan of the Knicks. Who has been worse? Or, if Dolan were getting replaced this year, who do you think you'd be more excited about getting replaced? Where do you sit and feel on the Wilpons versus Dolan?
This is tricky. Okay, it's a tough one. I've thought about it. I've talked about it a little bit too. The Wilpons, I think, were more of a reason the Mets could never maintain success. Whereas at least the Mets did have their highs, but they also obviously have had their lows, whereas the Knicks have just been basically background noise other than that one year where they lost in the second round because after Roy Hibbert blocked Melo at the rim. But think about James Dolan. And the Wilpons are no saints either. I'm not going to say they're good people, but I don't think they are. The whole thing with Jeff Wilpon and the pregnant woman, all that kind of stuff. Thing about James Dolan is he just seems like he's just so unlikable, and he just actively goes out his way to antagonize the fan base, and they try to stop the sell the team chants and all that kind of stuff. That's just people expressing their frustrations. It's like Stalin in Russia. You know what I mean? So I think James Dolan is the worst person, whereas the Wilpons are the worst owners. I do think both meddle. That's the thing is I do think a lot of the stuff times Donnie Walsh wanted to build the team the right way, and then the Melo thing he didn't want to make the trade, and then he kind of put his foot down. The thing is you have to understand James Dolan doesn't realize that he doesn't know basketball, so he's probably just doing what he wants. But it's he just listens to the wrong people. Hiring Phil Jackson for a role he was over his head in, and then all the stuff Phil caused. The fact Steve Mills was a nightmare. So all those plagues are brought on us by Dolan. But all the stuff Jeff Wilpon has done, where we did get good players, and he helped ruin them. The Pedro Martinez stuff, where they rushed him back, and then all the different stuff we've had from injuries, from the top to the bottom, all the. Like you said, the Mr. Met shirt. That's the epitome of what this Wilpon at the top of the org chart trickles down to. Mr. Met giving people the finger. So I have to go with the Wilpons, but it really is a 1A, 1B. I flip basically. If it's Knicks season, it's Dolan. If it's Mets season, the Mets just finished, so I'm in Wilpon mode. But you know what? We don't have to worry about that. James Dolan is my number one answer from here on out because Uncle Stevie will be taking over hopefully in the next month. Hopefully once the stupid fake. That's the other thing. I wouldn't have. If the Mets won the World Series or whatever you want to call this title here, it wouldn't have felt like a World Series.
No,
to me.
I'm so glad they didn't win it.
Yeah. Oh, I can rest in peace, this and that. No, I would have been all right, that was cool. But I really would like to win a real World Series before I die. So I'm 100% this doesn't really count in that sense. And I said that from before the season started. This isn't a new take. But yeah, I hate James Dolan so much.
I hate them both. To the Mets point. I want when they win the championship, I want to be able to go to one of the games. I want to be able to go to the parade.
Yes.
All that. I can't have it all be from my home. I really hope whoever wins the World Series this year is a team that doesn't need it, like the Dodgers, right? Or even I don't want the Yankees to win, by God. But if the poor Indians. And granted, they might literally be losing. But if they win their first championship since 1945 or whatever it is this year, and it's that's not fair, right? Imagine if the Cubs, this was the year they won. It would just be not fair. So I need it to be a team that has already done it, and it's just kind of oh, nice, add it to the list. We won't really count it, asterisk, all that.
I kind of wanted the Marlins to win it just because of that. I want the Marlins to win it, and you'd be Marlins, another weird-ass World Series. You're the perfect team to win it. Sweet, you're out,
I would love to see that. And then it was funny, Clem, when you said they both medal, I thought for a second you were meaning in an Olympic thing of worst owners, they would both medal, which is true. They're literally gold and silver of worst owners in sports. But you were no, they medal in the team. And it's oh, that's also true. They're the worst. They're the worst. Oh,
that's how bad our owners are. Is they mean different things and it's both correct. God damn it, I hate this.
but one of them's over. One of your nightmares is over, Clem. Which means there's light at the other end of the tunnel, right? That day will come. But it is true that there was just a feeling Wilpons and Dolan, as long as they were the owners, it just wasn't going to happen. And we got close, right? The Mets were that. 2015 haunts me to my grave. That's a whole nother pod. Picking apart 2015. I was there for all 3 home games, and a part of me is still there. I was there with one of my friends for 3 and 4. And then, Clem, you'll like this. I was with my father. Honestly, you remind me of him with the optimism and all the kindness. And he's the kind of guy that doesn't swear. never swears and doesn't like when I swear around him. When Duda missed that throw home, he just screams out, "How the fuck do you not make that throw?" And I looked at him and I just, in that moment, I was like, this is the lowest moment of my, like, this is the best moment in terms of seeing my dad. But I was like, if this is what brought that out of him, this man has watched more baseball than I will ever watch in my life. And if that was a terrible play, I just knew, it's like, that is seared in my mind. Just so.
That's awesome.
They kill me. I know. It's
like the worst moment ever, like you said, but it's like it's crazy that you actually, like, you have something to associate with that was like life altering, basically.
Clem, you got to understand. I'm going into it. Game 3. I had flown home from Australia, but for Game 2, I had actually driven up back to my alma mater, Binghamton, and asked my now girlfriend to be my girlfriend at that time. October 28th, 2015. We're still dating. 5 years later. So I'm on a high, right? Mets are down 2-0, but Game 3, fucking meet KFC, right, outside, end up on the blog the next day. I'm retweeted by Adam Rubin when he was still the writer of the Mets. The Mets fucking win. My friend got me field level seats for the game. David Wright homers. It is literally the greatest thing ever. I'm as high on life as could possibly be. And the Mets, just over the next 48 hours, they just tore it away. It was like I knew in that moment I could never stay happy. Like I should never think that I would stay happy ever because of one of my sports teams. That's just that is so killer. Games 4 and 5 kill me, and they lead me, Clem, into my last question. Going that around those games is when I really started believing in juju, and I was trying to bring good juju to my team. Clearly it didn't work no matter how much I tried. Where do you – I think I know the answer. Where do you stand on juju? And if you believe in it, how is it that you go about bringing good juju to your franchises?
I believe in it. I think it's – I mean, I don't know if I believe in it because I have to believe that I have some sort of a say in this, like, crazy roller coaster we live in. Like, it's like being in a car and having no control. It's like even just tell me I can turn the air conditioning on or pump the gas, but it just feels like we're just taking on these these complete strangers take us on this ride. But, like, again, if you get up and as soon as you get up, you know, something happens bad to your team, you're like, I'm not getting up the rest of the game. I'll still remember to this day, the Reggie Miller – it was 95. I was watching the Knicks. They were up, whatever, like 5-6 points with like 30 seconds left. And I was like, all right, going to go outside and play basketball. It was a beautiful spring day. Come back in, and that was the 8 points in 6 seconds or whatever the Reggie Miller thing was. And I was like, what the hell was that? And that's probably where, like, those 90s Knicks teams, I started believing in juju because I couldn't do anything because they would lose in such stupid ways sometimes. But I've lost a fantasy matchup. I was winning the fantasy playoffs, took a shower, came out. Guy scored like 35 points on me in like the 5-minute shower. It's like Blake Bortles was his quarterback. It was a whole thing. So, like, I do think you have to believe in the juju. There's a reason why athletes believe in it, coaches, all that kind of stuff. That's why I say everyone. Like I said, I tweet out one song. You need to feel good. What is it? Look good, feel good, play good. And if you're not gonna look good, if you're just sitting in your house in like your underwear, your robe or whatever, you got to at least feel good. Play the right music, make a good meal, do whatever needs to be done just to put you in that right mindset so you're feeling good. Because inevitably you're gonna feel like crap probably by like 1:30 because someone scores a touchdown. You have a sack against you like your partner does in the fantasy defenses, all that kind of stuff. You got to believe in something here because what the hell are we doing if there's nothing to believe in? And again, like I hate the jinxes. It's like if you say or do certain things, you're jinxing them. But I do think like if there's a lucky seat, there's a lucky cup, any of that kind of stuff, you got to keep it going because it's the only thing that's going to keep your like sanity basically during all this chaos.
I love all of that. And I realize I lied to you, Clem. I claimed that it was the Mets World Series. That was when maybe I started believing it about my teams. But I will tell you, I played baseball all my life. And that was when I really got into juju because I was that kid who believed if I clapped before a pitch, then they threw a strike, that was because of me. And if I took a step forward and then they got a hit, didn't take a step forward for the rest of the game. So it's one of those, and that now has manifested. As you would say, though, when you're a Mets and Jets fan, you start hoping that you're not impacting the game because clearly you're not doing it right. You know what I mean? Clearly you're fucking up. If it's at all on you, do something different. Do anything different than whatever you're doing.
got to do the Costanza, do everything against that what I would do, and then hopefully it starts panning out. Which, you know, I guess starting next year. Well, like I said, we're changing. We're all being optimists to start the Stevie era. We all came into every season like low and be like, what's going to happen next? Nope. No matter what happens, if it's a comedy of errors to start year, be like, well, it's just growing pains. It's just a new owner coming in. You got to believe in the good juju. You got to believe in Stevie. You got to believe in the Mets. You got to believe in something, because I don't know what else I'm going to do if this keeps going on for the rest of my life.
That is as beautifully said, and I will continue to believe that I can make an impact. I will continue to bring that good juju. Give me one last quick fire question, Clem. Heat Lakers starts tonight. I think the game is probably already started or about to start. Who's taking it home? NBA Finals.
God, I don't want to root for either of these teams. I mean, the Heat go back to one of my 90s Knicks again.
Exactly.
I mean, everyone's going to say Lakers, so I'm just going to say Heat. I'm going to say like that crazy like it's almost always the team with the best player wins, and the Lakers have the best two players. I'll just go like that dog mentality that Pat Riley beats into his guys, and that like Jimmy Butler has exhibited since he was in like Chicago. So I'm going to say Heat in 6. Just because it's like if I say Lakers and whatever, it's just another opinion. So Heat in 6, and I'm not even going to put that like just because whatever. Don't worry about that part if they actually do it. Just say I'm a genius, Clem Stradamus, Heat in 6.
Yeah, no, if we'll edit that, we'll wait to edit that last part in until the series ends, and then we'll come back and be like, you know, you got to listen to Clem on Clem's gambling taking off. As Penn National Gaming goes crazy, Clem knew the NBA Finals. He got it in 6.
Exactly. I like that.
It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Been so fun talking to you. I feel like I could talk football, Mets, Jets all the time. It's with you. This was really great. Very appreciative of you making the time here on this Wednesday night. And I will continue to listen, read, follow Clem, the Clem Report on Twitter. And Clem is part of Barstool, and keep up all the great work. And just so appreciative for the time.
No problem at all, man. Thanks for having me on. It was a ball. It was a blast. We're in through this craziness together. Mets side, fantasy side, all of it, and New York football as well. So thanks for having me on, and shout out to all the Westchester boys out there, the boys and girls listening out there.
Yeah, 914 Club. I honestly hate to say it, Clem, because I really do like you, but fuck Mayopack. That is a rival that burns deep. Those goddamn yellow uniforms. Yep. I know exactly. Just fuck them. Mayopack and Harrison and all those goddamn ups, you know, like northern teams. I hate them. So it really love you, appreciate it, but Mayopack is killer. And people on this pod will understand. Everybody has their memories of their fucking Mayopack games at some point.
I'll take it. That's fine. I like to hear that. We'll end on that note. That's a perfect way to end it. I like a little bit of salt in it. I like
exactly. A little salt in the wound at the end. Well, awesome. I'll get you, I'll share you the link and really just thank you and have an awesome night. And I'm sure I'll respond to your tweet later tonight.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Tag me in it. And hey, everyone out there, best of luck in the fantasy, Mets, Yankees, whatever it may be. Best of luck in fantasy, and see you on the other side with Uncle Stevie.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right.
No problem.
Thanks, Clem.
Later.